maximum that the government can possibly do as a share of GDP is about 40%. Which is the level that George Osborne is planning to bring it back down to, by the way. It means that really, if you're going to be sustainable, you've got to be certainly no more than 35%, which some of you remember Sergeant Jarvin mentioned last night, is the kind of target he would like to see go for. And more realistically, even 30%. I would like to see it go lower than that, but certainly that's what you are. Now, the point is, at the moment, we are facing a situation where, quite clearly, we have a huge structural deficit. The kind of demands for the government to do things are running up against structural limitations. And this does raise profound questions about what the role of public authority in the state should be. It also raises another question. This is the other element of the crisis which I'll mention, and that is the increasing, I think, lack of faith in what you might call the managerial state. Not so much the intervention state, but the idea simply that the state has this capacity which it shares with large private corporations, which I also doubt have it, to control and run a whole lot of people's lives on the basis of some kind of set of techniques or principles which can be applied in a neutral way to a whole range of aspects of life, including many aspects of everyday life. And I think that both the fiscal crisis of the state and the crisis of the legitimacy of what you might call government intervention and manipulation of a whole range of aspects of everyday life mean that all kinds of issues are now becoming politically pressing or part of the public debate, which is not the case before. The whole question of why, for example, we should have such a paternalistic and managerial political class, why we should have such detailed control over a whole range of aspects of our private life, that's now becoming an issue in a way that I think it has not been for a long, long time. Now, what I'm saying is that we have a huge opportunity. It doesn't necessarily follow, of course, that opportunity will be taken. Opportunities can be taken by people of who you, and I think everyone in this room, would disapprove as much as by people we might broadly approve of. So this is, in a sense, an opportunity, but no more than that. You have to have the arguments, you have to have the organisation, you have to have the people as well to be able to take advantage of that kind of opportunity. But I do think all kinds of things are possible now that were not possible, say, even 10 years ago, and certainly not 20 years ago.
No, I very much agree that it is a time of political realignment, which is partly evidenced by the fact that I'm here as a left libertarian. And I think that the crisis does present an opportunity to us and a kind of common interest between left and right libertarians in a way that past crises wouldn't. Past crises would have been a direct conflict of interest between left and right. I think now there should be a uniting. The reason for that, I think, is the state has shifted in form from being something that was in some way responsive to public need and actually did useful stuff, to something that's become more concerned with behaviour policing. So it's more concerned with making your lives harder than making it easier, than with controlling you rather than delivering goods. So you take a service like rubbish collection, which is a fairly simple service, very important part of civilised life, and you can see a shift within councils of less and less collection and less focus on service delivery and more behaviour policing. So more and more cameras in bins, monitoring of how many bins you've got, which ones you put them into, and that kind of thing. And you can see sectors within councils. So you've got the working class bin men who still go around, do their job, pick up the bin, put them in the van. But then you've got this sort of middle class clipboards, who are really self-righteous and think that they're God's gift to get people to put the bin in exactly the right place, and there's very much a kind of new strata within councils of this kind of self-righteous kind of bureaucratic class, and they have a really hostile attitude towards people. I actually watched a documentary called Revenge of the Bin Men, and one of the middle class clipboards on that, she said, it's rubbish, people keep on producing it. And they had this idea of people of this disgusting rubbish producing, they just keep on, they put things in the wrong place, and there was this sort of really hostile attitude, whereas the bin man in it was like, I do a public service, I do a job, he was very proud. You get the same thing in the NHS, in terms of a growth of the safer travel, healthy eating, smoking cessation advisor class. You go in with a sports injury, they want to know about your drinking. I came out of hospital with quite a serious operation. I had a letter from my health trust. I thought maybe they wanted to see how I am. But actually it was, they wanted to introduce me to the walking opportunities in Camden. and a healthier lifestyle that was possible that I hadn't realised, obviously. I couldn't move at the time, but there you go. Similarly, I think there's been a co-option of the charity sector. NSPCC is not an independent organisation anymore. Gone from 40 million to 150 million pound budget. That's largely state funding. And I think that there's a whole bunch of nominally independent civic organisations that are actually part of this behaviour police structure. So that's the shift within old institutions, the old public service institutions. You see that in all the different areas of public services. The new institutions that have been set up are almost pure behaviour police. So the independent safeguarding authority is almost purely about monitoring those 12 million, 13 million adults, actually not about paedophiles at all. Safeguarding officers are not really interested in paedophiles, they're actually interested in monitoring everybody else. New cadres of police, CSOs, neighbourhood wardens, they don't actually have a law and order function. If someone gets robbed or something, there's nothing they can do. It's all about behaviour policing. I think that's been the shift within the state. So if the state has to cut 20%, let it be that 20%. Because I think that you could do that in a way that would entirely improve public quality of life, make us freer, healthier, happier, etc. This structure is an immense drain on society. I completely agree with you about the effect on business. It's a parasitic body, and it feeds on social activity and social life. I just finished a report on leafleting bans, which means that basically in lots of areas, if you want to hand out leaflets, you have to apply for a licence. That involves a very long form, applying 28 days beforehand, saying what the content of your leaflet, all sorts of information. And just so you look at the form and you lose the will to act in any respect. I think that this is a demobilising bureaucracy. You think you want to do something, and you look at the form that's required, and you think, well, actually, maybe I don't want to do it. And it's that kind of, everything becomes so arduous. A garden fate, public liability insurance, CRB checks, licenses, it's just the whole thing. The whole structure is set to demobilise social life, which has an economically demotivating effect, but also a civically demotivating effect. This will not happen spontaneously. The state is not going to realise this is the useless 20%, we need to cut that. In fact, I think it's the opposite. In the sense that, in their upside-down worldview, they think that part is more important than the public service part. And they will cut public services before they'll cut that part. So like Camden has responded to the need to cut back by cutting back further on rubbish collection, and it's said it's strengthening rubbish enforcement more. So more on-the-spot fines, more monitoring of litter bins, which is not necessarily cost-effective, but that's the way they see it. In their head, they can cut that, but they can cut the collection, they can't cut the enforcement. They can cut day care centres for elderly, they can't cut CRB checks. They're still CRB checking anyone who walks through the door. They're CRB checking old ladies who call up other old ladies to talk about things, whatever they talk about. But they're CRB checking them, and they think that's important, but the daycare centre isn't somehow. It's the upside-down world. So I think that in conclusion, this is the 20% that could go. The state's become a parasitic organ on society. It's not responsive to public need. And that is, as a cause, I think, which is quite unlike any other crisis in history, that was a cause is very much uniting right and left, including people who believe in autonomy and freedom, and demand for the space to return to civil society. And these 20% could be cut in a way that would be entirely beneficial and make us all a lot happier and healthier.
Okay, well let me pick up and carry on from where Steve left off. Now, as Steve said, that basically the crisis presents lots of opportunities, that it makes many things, you can talk about a lot, you can propose a lot, which would have had you laughed out of court before the crisis happened. Now, that's true, it does create those opportunities. But while Steve quoted Rahm Emanuel saying, never let a good crisis go to waste, I'll quote another political animal, Linton Crosby, an election maestro, who said, I think you can't fatten the hog on market day, which is to say you have to put in the groundwork before if you're going to be able to take advantage of the situation when it arises. And I hate to start on a kind of negative note, hopefully I'll finish on more of a positive, but I think that we as libertarians have missed quite a big opportunity over the last few years.